A priest went to see my aunt. He heard her speaking with that other voice. He saw her trying to escape from the room where we were keeping her. He himself had to help restrain her and feel that superhuman strength she had, while she insulted him, while she said hurtful things to him that, seeing how they affected him, seemed true. Then he told my uncle that there was nothing he could do to help her, and we never saw him again. We were completely alone. Stay until the end of this episode because we're going to tell you how to win an autographed copy of Relatos de la Noche. Welcome to a new October episode of Relatos de la Noche, where, as you may have noticed, we've been bringing you some of the scariest stories we've received in recent months. And of course, we had to save them for this month, for the scariest month of the year, for our October of stories. We remind you to subscribe if you haven't already, so you can become part of this community, the best community on the internet. And without further ado, let's get started. Are the excuses over? It's time to start today's episode of Night Stories. Subscribe. Hello, community. My name is Ivana. This story happened a few years ago in 2016 when I was 12. I'm from Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, and this happened in San Carlos during summer vacation. My mom had rented a condo on the beach for a week so we could all spend time together. My parents, my brother, and me. It was a very nice condo, one of those right in front of the sea with big windows. Everything seemed perfect, but the first night something strange was felt. That first night, already late into the early morning. My brother and I heard laughter in the hallway, but not from adults. They were children's laughter. We thought it must be the neighbors' kids because the place was full of families. My brother and I just laughed too, trying not to get scared, and we went back to sleep without thinking much about it. But the second time, it wasn't like that. Something even stranger happened. I was lying down. I had already fallen asleep watching television. When I heard my brother call me from the bathroom, he said, "Hey,
Ivana, hand me a towel.
I got up, walked to the bathroom, asked him, "Which one do you want?" He didn't answer me. I pushed the door, but it was stuck. Then from inside, I heard his voice, the white one again. I passed the towel under the door, and at that moment, I heard my brother's voice behind me. "In bed, what are you doing?" I turned around. My brother was there, sitting, as if he had just woken up. He told me he hadn't gotten up, that he'd been asleep for a while, that I had just woken him up. Talking there, alone in the bathroom, we both went quiet, just listening to the sound of the water falling in the shower. My mom came in to see what was going on, but she didn't find anything except the shower running in the bathroom, filled with steam. It must have been the wind, just a mix-up because we fell asleep. What she said didn't make any sense, but people would rather believe anything than something they can't explain. As you can imagine, I couldn't sleep at all that night. In the morning, my mom told me that before going to sleep, she had heard footsteps in the hallway of the condo, like someone was walking barefoot in the middle of the night. My dad said it was probably just people coming back from the beach outside, but she was sure it wasn't. That it had been inside. They said they were short, childlike footsteps. And besides, even if it had been outside, it would be very strange for a child to be awake at 3 a.m. On the third day, we all went to the pool, and when we came back, the closet door in the room where we were sleeping was open. My mom got mad because she said we had left everything messy, but I was pretty sure I had closed it before we left. That night, while we were playing on the phone, we heard a laugh inside the closet. A quiet laugh, like someone was trying not to be heard. We thought it was the neighbor, but the closet didn't lead to another apartment. It led to the bathroom. My brother, who was always braver, went over, opened the door, and said, "Is someone there?" Nothing, just the reflection of the bathroom in the mirror at the back. He shut the door and slept. I fell asleep with the feeling that someone was watching us, and that night I dreamed of a boy who had the same face as my brother, even though I knew it wasn't him. In the dream, he spoke to me from the hallway of the condominium, asking me to go out with him to keep him company. I woke up suddenly, drenched in sweat. It was 3:27 in the morning. Then, now fully awake, I heard footsteps outside the room, quick little steps, and then a soft knock on the door. I didn't open it. Of course, I didn't open it. The next morning, I told my mom, but she asked me not to say anything to my brother because he could get even more scared. And that same night, something even worse happened. Me. My grandmother, who had come to spend the weekend with us, slept on the couch in the common area around 12 in the morning. She heard someone walking toward the kitchen, opened her eyes, and saw a skinny boy in the dark. She assumed it was my brother, spoke to him softly. "Can't sleep, my love." The boy stood still in front of her, but he didn't answer. She told me he was the same height, wearing the same pajamas, had the same face as my brother, but he didn't say anything. He simply turned halfway and walked toward the room hallway. My grandmother got up to follow him, and when she got to the room, she saw that my brother was sleeping deeply in bed, she said. She said that then she felt a horrible cold, as if the whole room was in a freezer. Suddenly, the past few nights, we've all slept with the lights on. On the last day, while my mom was packing the suitcases, I was left alone in the room, picking up some things. That's when I heard someone call my name in a very soft, childlike voice. I thought it was my brother, but when I checked the hallway, I saw he was outside with my parents. I went back to the room and stood still. I saw my reflection in the mirror, and behind me, he was there. He made me a boy identical to my brother, but very pale, with his eyes extremely wide open. He was looking at me. He didn't move. He didn't seem to be trying to scare me. I didn't say anything. I didn't scream. I just left the room and got into the car without looking back. My mom asked me what was wrong, but I didn't say anything. There was nothing wrong with me. We went back to Ciudad Obregón. That same afternoon, everything went back to normal. And a couple of weeks later, no one talked about the trip anymore. I woke up at midnight because I heard someone praying in the next room. It was a child's voice, praying very slowly, almost in whispers. I got up and went to my brother's room, but he was asleep. It was happening again. I went back to my room and the voice continued for a few more seconds until it suddenly stopped. Since then, I haven't heard it again, but I never dared to ask if anyone else in the house did. I think that boy came with us. Who knows? Maybe after so many years he's still here, but at least we can't hear him anymore. Thank you. Hello, Ordeal, and hello, community. My name is Mariela, and I'm from Santiago, Chile. Some time ago, my son made me listen to Relatos de la Noche, and together with him and my family, we became fans of your stories. I told them one that happened in my family when my oldest son was just 3 years old, barely. My children, after hearing it, encouraged me to send it to you. I would like you to listen to it. If you could share it with the community, if you do, I just ask you, please, to change our names. My family didn't like it, would you? Even after so many years, they don't like to talk about what happened, and those who were children back then don't remember it anymore. And it's better that way. This is my story. It was in the year 1995. My husband's son and I moved into my grandma's house. She left me her small house, which I shared with Uncle Raul and his family. My grandma went to live with her youngest daughter, Patricia, and her two daughters, Carolina and Elisa, who were 4 and 5 years old, and her husband, Hector. They lived in another district. One night we got a phone call. It was my Uncle Hector, letting us know that my Aunt Patricia was very sick. My Uncle Raul and his oldest son left right away. I stayed behind, feeling uneasy, waiting until very late for them to come back with news. When they did, my cousin knocked on the door. I asked him what had happened. How was my aunt? I remember well that it was early morning and very cold. My cousin came into my room, and I noticed he looked very scared. He asked me if he could sleep in my son's bed. I said yes, and after a while, I moved my son to my bed, unable to sleep. My cousin asked me if I had a Bible. I asked him just why, and he answered, because I'm very scared. I'll tell you tomorrow. I don't want to. I can't talk right now. He was completely pale. At that time, I didn't have a Bible or anything like that. I didn't believe in anything at all. The next day, he briefly told us what had happened. He said that my aunt seemed possessed, that it wasn't really her. He said he saw her try to stab herself with a knife, that she had incredible strength, and what impacted him the most was the way she spoke, the things she said. But he didn't want to go into details. He just kept repeating that he was scared to death, that he would never get over it. That day we agreed to go see her. My cousin didn't want to, and asked me to leave my son at home. He said it wasn't a good idea for the kids to go. He stayed to take care of my nephews and my son, so it was my Uncle Raul, his wife, my husband, and me who went. When we arrived, my grandma and my aunt's husband were very nervous. They had started hanging crosses made of park branches and red thread on the doors and windows of the house. Had someone told them that could help? I went into the room where she was. My aunt was lying down. She looked bad. She was complaining a lot about a headache and was asking for the lights to be turned off because they bothered her. So the house was dimly lit with a rather heavy atmosphere. That day she asked me to go with her to the bathroom. She was having trouble walking. The bathroom was right in front of her room with a big mirror above the sink. I went with her. She lowered her head a bit and looked at herself in the mirror, then looked at me through it. And then she started to laugh, but it wasn't a normal laugh. It was hoarse, terrifying. She had never laughed like that before. It looked like her jaw had become dislocated from how wide open it was, like in horror movies. Curiously, that was the only room in the house that didn't have a park cross on the window. We moved her from the bathroom and seated her in the living room. She spoke with an almost masculine voice, saying hurtful things to everyone who was near. Very hurtful, real things. When my husband heard her, he took my nieces outside. We did our best to take her back to the room. It was incredible how strong she was, especially considering how skinny she was. She struggled and laughed. Just like my husband, I wanted to run away, but I snapped out of it and thought, how could I leave? She's my aunt, so I started talking to her, asking her to snap out of it. At that moment, when she turned to look at me, for the first time in my life, I felt a chill run through my whole body, a kind of chill I've never felt again. Even so, we managed to make it to bed. My grandma was praying just like my Uncle Raul's wife. At one point, my aunt, with that same hoarse voice, looked over to where we were, my Uncle Raul and me, and she said, "Why do you bring your dad if this one is mine?" And suddenly the door to the room closed by itself. For a second, my aunt... I could say that my aunt levitated a few centimeters above the bed and then fell. Maybe it was imperceptible, but I saw it. I saw how she rose, how she lifted a few centimeters while lying down. Right at that moment, my grandfather arrived. We didn't know he was coming, but he entered the house and fell violently as he crossed the door. I, being skeptical, tried to find a logical explanation for everything. I thought that maybe my aunt was sick, maybe a mental illness that affected her a lot, that something happened to her as a child, or that she had gotten a blow to the head. I don't know. I tried to explain it any way I could before accepting that we were dealing with a possession. When we got back home, all I could think about was that she had gone crazy, that my aunt had gone crazy forever. That's why we decided someone needed to stay with my grandmother to help care for my aunt and the girls. I asked my Uncle Raul's wife to take care of my son, and I promised to go every morning to help my grandmother. I left, obviously, or at least that's what I thought, because I was reluctant to convince myself of the paranormal. That time when I arrived at the house, I noticed that the girls were acting strange, scared. Normally they would follow me around, but that day they were clinging to me as if they were looking for protection. That night my aunt was complaining that she couldn't sleep, that she was feeling unwell. My grandmother had filled the room with crosses made out of sticks, and she wouldn't stop praying. My aunt's husband, Hector, brought a priest. We were talking with him in the living room when my aunt came out of the bedroom out of her mind, screaming and insulting the priest. I was trying to calm her down when suddenly she lunged at the priest. Between him and Hector, they finally restrained her and threw her to the living room floor. The priest got on top of her, holding her hands down with his knees, and prayed with a large silver cross. My grandma and Hector were praying too. I was behind them. The priest kept praying with the cross held high, and at one point he put it in her mouth while she screamed and writhed. When he took it out, the cross was yellow, as if it had rusted. After that, she calmed down. They took her and left her in the room. The priest sprinkled holy water all over the house, then took Hector to the yard. They talked for a while, and then he left. Hector told me that the priest wasn't coming back. He said he couldn't do anything else. We were completely alone. The next day I left early again to help my grandmother. She was sick and looked very tired. She was one of those old-fashioned grandmothers who never took naps, always cooking, planting, always doing something. But that day she sat in her armchair and fell asleep because she had had a terrible night. After leaving my aunt sleeping, I sat in the living room. Then Elisa and Caro sat with me on the big couch. I started to get really sleepy. I couldn't keep my eyes open. I was struggling not to fall asleep. I realized that the girls had also fallen asleep in my arms. I was hugging them. I turned to look at my grandma, and she was asleep too. Suddenly, from far away, I heard my name. I stood up immediately and went to where my Aunt Patricia was. When I walked in, my aunt yelled at me, "What?"
I'm not from here.
I was trying to calm her down with my hand, and she kept insisting, "No, go away."
Get out of here.
I took her hand and said, "Patricia, it's me." Then she started crying. I hugged her and asked her what was wrong. She told me, "I've been talking to you for a while and you came in twice, but it wasn't you." I told her to calm down, that it really was me, and I hugged her. I just wanted her to feel better. She had a Bible and a bottle of holy water on her nightstand. I started reading the Bible even though I didn't pray. I opened it to Psalm 23. "The Lord is my shepherd," and I started to read, leaning on the bed's headboard as my aunt hugs me. And suddenly something very, very strange happened. Outside the door, I saw a black thing pass through the hallway, crossing into the girls' room. I stood up and took the holy water to the room where they were. More out of anger than fear, I started yelling insults at it, everyone I could think of. I had heard that you should do that when a spirit is bothering you. My grandmother woke up when she heard me yelling and started praying. understanding what was happening. I was still furious. I replaced fear with anger for the rest of the night, just to endure it. The next day, Hector brought the evangelical brothers because the priest didn't want to come back anymore. They arrived in the afternoon, and by then the girls were already very scared. My grandma was crying and praying. My aunt was begging for someone to bring anyone who could help her. Hector and Uncle Raul arrived with the evangelicals. I was there. They all went into my aunt's room and started to pray. Suddenly, the pastor stood in front of me and said, "You leave, because you're interrupting the prayer. You don't believe, do you?" I left, and I don't really know what happened that time, but I heard a lot of shouting. I could hear it from outside, but I never knew exactly what happened in there, because Uncle Raul never wanted to talk about it. Things had happened to him before too, so I think he was even afraid to mention it. The next day, Hector stayed at home to work. I took the opportunity and went to talk to a priest. I went downtown to look for a church, went into the first one I found, and asked to speak with the priest. They made me wait for a while, but in the end, I was able to talk to him. I told him everything just as I had experienced it, because this isn't something someone told me, I lived it myself. The priest looked at me and said, "Look, I can't tell you that this is true. I also can't tell you that it's a lie." He asked me if I had children. I told him yes, I had a 3-year-old. Then he gave me a little silver chain that I still have and told me, "Put it on your son." He blessed it right there and repeated, "Put it on him. And don't take him to that place for any reason." Because again, my intention is not to scare you, but I can assure you that all of this is a lie. I was left with a strange feeling, as if it confirmed to me without doing anything that everything was true, that something really was happening. I sat in the church for the first time in my life, and I noticed a virgin that was there. It was the Virgin of the Rosary, the same one my mom had on her grave. I had no idea about that. At that moment, because of that strange coincidence, I felt compelled to promise her I would go pray to her for 9 Thursdays in a row. I was helping my aunt. I left the church, and right outside there were stands selling holy cards and silver chains with crucifixes. I bought 2 more chains and went back to talk to the priest. I asked him if he could bless them for my aunt's girls, and he did. I went back to my poor aunt's house, put the chains on the girls, and told them very clearly, "Don't ever take them off for anything in the world. If anyone tells you that you have to take them off, don't do it." As they always listened to me, especially the youngest one, they didn't take them off. My aunt looked a little better. Everything was fine. Several days passed and everything seemed calmer. After the visit from the evangelicals, the house felt much calmer. But one day the girls told me that something strange had happened at night, that something came down from the ceiling, a figure that invited them to play. He told them that to go with him, they had to take off those chains from their necks. Elisa, the youngest one, told him that she didn't tell me, that she answered him that I had told her she couldn't take it off, so she wasn't going to do it. And that's what happened. After that, everything calmed down again. It was a quiet week, but suddenly they called us again. We were at the Pinar house when they told us that Patricia had relapsed again. Everyone went there, but I didn't go. I don't remember exactly why, but I think I stayed with my son. After that, they decided to call some Brazilian monks who did spiritual work remotely. These monks were very strong spiritually, and since they started their rituals, my aunt began to get better little by little, but every day a bit more. Shortly after, I don't know if it was a month or 2, my grandmother told us something amazing. The neighbor across the street was going through the same thing as Patricia, but the neighbor was being treated with sleep therapy. They would admit her and make her sleep. In the end, about 6 months later, we found out that she had been permanently admitted to an insane asylum. But I know that lady was never crazy, and I also know that whatever bothered my aunt is still out there. That house? Later, she tried to sell it, but no one ever bought it, and I kept my promise. I went all 9 Thursdays to pray to the Virgin of the Rosary. Years later, I learned about a religion called Santeria. Today, I'm a Santera, and I dedicate myself to helping people who have these kinds of problems. Of course, I have more stories that I've experienced in recent years, and I hope to be able to tell them soon. Like I told you, I know that whatever attacked my aunt is still around here, but now I'm much more prepared to face it. Thank you for reading. Have a very good night. And thank you all for still being here. You're almost making it through this episode, although we still have one more story left, a really, really terrifying one. However, we want to let you know that to celebrate our book, Relatos de la Noche, now being available in Spain, with a 100% Spanish edition, we're going to give away 5 books on Instagram and 5 on TikTok. Go follow us over there and comment, "I want a book," to participate. We're under RDL Official on both platforms. Any other account with dots, dashes, or numbers, any other is fake. RDL Official is the only real one, the only true one. Of course, we're also going to give away 5 books here. Just comment mentioning October of Stories and you're in. The book will reach you, no matter where you're listening from. Let's continue. Hello, Night Stories community. My name is Victor Valera, and I want to share with you a story that happened to me recently. And, well, I learned that it's not always a good thing to find what you're looking for. This happened just 2 weeks ago in San Pedro Cholula, Puebla, specifically at Zapotecas Hill. A place that, besides being an ecological reserve, is known for something darker, a cave that, according to stories, is inhabited by the devil. They say that pacts are made inside, that people have seen dark figures, and that time doesn't pass the same way when you enter, when you're there. They talk about a man dressed in black who disappears at dawn, about voices that call you from deep inside if you're nearby, and about people who go in but never come out again. My friend Gara and I had heard those stories for a long time. One night, over drinks and conversation, we wondered, what if we check for ourselves what's there? We planned it for weeks. The idea was to climb the hill at night, camp, and be right at the entrance of the famous Devil's Cave at exactly 3 in the morning. The day arrived. It was July 8, 2025. We met at my friend's house, who lives a little closer to the hill. It was around 7 in the evening. We packed backpacks, flashlights, food, and left a little later at 9. The walk was peaceful. Lonely streets, like always during the week. The people who live around there know that those streets leading to the hill are full of cyclists on weekends, but during the week, no one passes by. We arrived at the entrance to the hill a little after 10. We went up with our flashlights, sleeping bags, and everything we needed to spend the night. It wasn't cold, but the air felt fresh. The hill, even from below, had something strange about it at night, a weird silence, as if the natural sounds were turned off because of something, I don't know, something older, something deeper. We passed through some open areas with trees that for a moment I felt seemed to move more than usual. We found a clearing and set up the tent there. It must have been around 11:30 when we were ready to sleep for a while before continuing up to the cave. The sky was completely black, not a moon or a star in sight. It was hard for Gara to fall asleep. I closed my eyes, but what I experienced or dreamed, I don't know how to explain it, left a mark on me. At 12:37, I felt something touch the tent. At first I thought it was the wind or some small animal, but then I heard a labored, slow breathing, very close to my ear, but from outside. I didn't want to move or open the zipper, and then I heard Guerra whisper, "You hear it too, right?" I didn't answer. I didn't know if he was talking in his sleep or if he was hearing it too. A few minutes passed, the sound stopped, and then nothing else was heard. Around 2 in the morning, we got up. We couldn't sleep. The atmosphere felt oppressive, like something was pressing on our chests. We collected everything and walked toward the trail to the cave. Guerra started falling behind. I asked him if he was okay, and he just said, "Dude, I'm not sure this is a good idea." "We're already here. Hang in there," I replied. And right at that moment, we heard footsteps behind us, clear and sharp, as if someone was following us. We stopped. There was no one, not even a cricket or the wind. The hills seemed to be holding its breath. Maybe it was Vita. They made fun of me, but at that moment, honestly, I was excited. That's exactly why we had gone. But my friend had a different look on his face. He was pale, as if he knew something was going to happen. A few minutes later, we found her. The entrance to the cave wasn't marked. It was just an opening between black rocks and damp earth. From the outside, you could already feel a different kind of darkness, as if light couldn't get in. There. We turned on the flashlights and went in. The smell was the first thing, a mix between old iron and rotten earth. Then the flashlights started flickering as if they were running out of battery, and our voices began to sound strange. I spoke, but the war voice sounded as if it was coming from that other place. Slower, more distorted, distant. On one of the walls, there were handprints, not painted, but pressed into the stones. We went a little further, and then we heard the worst thing of that night. A child's cry. "Ah. Do you hear that?" I asked him. "No," Guerra answered me, but his face said otherwise. It was impossible. How could there be a baby at that hour, in that place? It was already around 3:20 when we went to the back, a crevice in the rock. It was already around 3:20 when we found a crevice in the rock at the back. Inside, there was a kind of figure made of branches, long hair that looked human, and animal bones. I think it was like a totem. When I shined the light on its face, if it even had one, something moved behind it. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't human. I feel like it was something we weren't supposed to see. The war flashlight suddenly went out. He screamed, and at that moment we heard a voice, not with our ears, but inside our heads. A mouthless voice, deep, impossible.
What do you want?
And we ran. We bumped into the walls, not knowing if we were going outside or deeper in. The cave seemed to change as if it was swallowing us. There was no exit, no entrance, only darkness. And suddenly I felt a tremendous blow to my face, as if I had crashed into a wall. I could only feel the impact, my nose burning, my face covered in tears. I got up trying to see. I realized we were lying outside the cave. I checked the time on my watch. We had never gone in. Not even a minute had passed, but we had scratches. Our clothes were covered in dirt, and inside my backpack was that figure made of branches. I don't know how it got there, but we left it very carefully, right at the entrance. Guerra didn't say a word. He walked as if in a trance. I was in shock too. We started going down in silence, but again we heard the voices behind us asking, "What do you want?"
What are you looking for?
We tried to ignore them, but we felt they were following us closer and closer. We heard the voices getting closer and closer to us. That's when I remembered I had holy water from the Basilica of Guadalupe. I took it out and sprinkled myself all over, and also my friend. I started praying out loud, clutching my St. Benedict medal, and only then did the voices start to fade away. They started falling behind. We managed to come down from that hill. Since that night, we haven't slept well. Sometimes I hear scratching on the wall of my room, even though I live in an apartment. And Guerra says he's being followed, that he's noticed it. He also says that sometimes when he looks in the mirror with the lights off, he sees a shadow behind him, a silhouette. Maybe we weren't the first ones to get close to that darkness. That I know for sure, someone else has tried. And that's exactly why I'm writing. Because if someone else who went in there is listening to me, I want to ask, how did you get back to normal? If you were able to do it? Because what lives in Zapotecas Hills still hasn't left us in peace.